They thought she was just another quiet, new girl, but what they didn't see was 8 years of power behind her silence. When Autumn Blake stepped through the doors of Westlake High for the first time, she already knew what was coming. She had moved from a rough part of Detroit where learning to fight wasn't a hobby, it was a survival skill. With a black belt in karate earned over 8 grueling years, Autumn had trained to be strong, disciplined, and focused. But here in a school where her face stood out among a sea of unfamiliar ones, the bullies didn't see a fighter. They saw a quiet black girl with no friends. Easy prey. They came at her fast taunts, whispers, cornering her in the halls. The ringleader, Chad Morrison, wore his arrogance like a badge. Backed by his buddies Troy and Zane, he demanded a so-called welcome fee, a thinly veiled threat disguised as school tradition. Autumn didn't flinch. She stood her ground, replying evenly, "I don't pay protection money." Her refusal stunned them, no. One ever said no to Chad. That first confrontation didn't end the harassment, though. It only lit a fuse. From locker sabotage to stolen notes, each stunt was meant to break her spirit. But Autumn wasn't new to adversity. She had faced worse and survived. Each morning she trained in silence, her strikes hitting the heavy bag with focus and control. Because deep down she knew the day would come when walking away wouldn't be an option. And when that day arrived, Autumn wouldn't be the one who broke. By her 3rd day at Westlake High, Autumn, Blake was already used to the sideways glances and the hushed conversations that followed her down the hallways. She held her head high, just like her old karate master had taught her, shoulders relaxed, eyes steady. Never show fear, but never go looking for a fight either. Still, it was impossible not to notice how different this place was from Detroit. Out of 800 students, she could count the black faces on 2 hands. She wasn't just news, he was alone. Classes passed without incident until lunch. That was where the social hierarchy revealed itself. The athletes huddled in one corner, the theater kids by the windows, and the elite, polished group took over the center of the cafeteria like royalty in a court. Autumn grabbed a sandwich and looked for a quiet place to sit. But before she could move, a voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Oh well, look what wandered in here." It was Chad Morrison again, standing tall in his Letterman jacket, flanked by Troy and Zane, both smirking like backup singers to a cruel chorus. The room fell quiet as heads turned to watch. Autumn didn't stop walking. Chad stepped into her path. "I'm talking to you," he said coolly. "We need to have a conversation." She stopped. "About what?" "About how things work around here," he said with a grin that didn't reach his cold eyes. "New students usually pay a little welcome fee. Insurance. So, accidents don't happen." Autumn caught the subtle shift as Troy and Zane closed in on either side. The tension was thick. Her voice remained calm. "Insurance against what exactly?" "What? Lockers getting jammed, books disappearing, people bumping into you in the halls." Chad shrugged. "Funny how clumsy some folks get, especially the ones who don't belong." Autumn set her lunch tray down. She turned slowly, meeting Chad's eyes with a quiet steadiness that made him pause. "I don't pay protection money," she said flatly. For a split second, Chad's expression faltered. Then he recovered, smirking again. "That's where you're wrong. Everyone pays. Question is, do you pay easy or pay hard?" Autumn didn't say a word. She picked up her tray and calmly walked around him toward an empty table. The room buzzed with whispers as students watched in disbelief. Chad's face darkened with anger. "This isn't over," he called after her. "Nobody disrespects me in my school." Autumn sat and unwrapped her sandwich like nothing had happened. But from the corner of her eye, she watched Chad storm off. Across the cafeteria, a student she hadn't noticed before. Miles Harper shook his head and whispered to his friend, "She has no idea what she just started." Before the end of the day, Chad and his crew were already retaliating. When Autumn returned to her locker after second period, the lock wouldn't turn. Someone had jammed chewing gum into the keyhole. Minutes later, her notebook was missing. She found it being mocked by Zane in the freshman hall, reading her notes aloud in a mocking tone. Autumn didn't argue. She simply pulled out her phone and took a photo of Zane holding it. "What are you doing?" he asked, suddenly defensive. "Evidence," she said calmly, "in case I need to file a theft report." The notebook landed at her feet a second later. Later that day, Miles approached her discreetly. "You need to be careful," he warned. "Chad's not just some cocky kid. His family practically owns this town. His uncle's the police chief. And last year a transfer student ended up in the ER after crossing him." Autumn's grip tightened around her books. "Are you trying to scare me?" "I'm trying to help you," Miles said, his voice low and sincere. "He doesn't fight fair. He wants you to lose control." She nodded slowly. But inside, a fire was building. She had tried walking away. She had tried ignoring the threats. But if Chad Morrison wanted a fight, he'd get one. Only this time it wouldn't be on his terms. By Thursday morning, the air around Autumn Blake felt heavier. The lockers, the classroom doors, the paths between periods, none of it felt neutral anymore. Chad Morrison's presence had turned the entire school into a stage, and Autumn, whether she liked it or not, was now the main act. Every hallway glance felt loaded. Every locker slam echoed longer. And by lunchtime, she understood why. She found her locker defecte banana duct-taped to the front with a handwritten note that read, "Welcome to the jungle." The reference was clear. The handwriting Chad's. She didn't flinch. Autumn peeled the note off, crumpled it, and tossed it into the trash. But she kept the tape, calmly sliding it into her backpack. She didn't need to react emotionally. She just needed evidence. Chad's entourage waited nearby, of course. He swaggered toward her, smirking like he had rehearsed every line. "Didn't like your present," he said loudly, drawing attention from nearby students. "Very creative," Autumn replied, her voice even. "You might want to work on your handwriting, though. Makes it easy to trace." Chad's smirk twisted into something tighter, something meaner. "Maybe you need a lesson in respect." Maybe, she said, closing her locker with deliberate calm. "You need a lesson in basic human decency." A ripple of whispers passed through the students now gathering. Phones were out. The game had changed, now people were watching. By sixth period, Chad and his crew turned up the pressure. Someone spilled chocolate milk across her backpack. Her safety goggles went missing in chemistry. Even Jake accidentally knocked her lunch tray to the ground. Autumn knelt to pick it up, but not before locking eyes with Jake. She said nothing. But her silence didn't mean surrender. The tipping point came during seventh period. Autumn sat quietly in English class when Chad raised his hand. "Mrs. Wheeler," he said with faux innocence, "I think we should hear from our newest student. I bet she has some real insight into To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, with the themes and all." The room went still. The teacher, unsure of his tone, smiled gently. "Autumn, would you like to share your thoughts?" Autumn nodded, unfazed. She spoke clearly and with grace, offering a thoughtful perspective on justice, prejudice, and moral courage. Her words rang out with intelligence and control. When she finished, Chad began to slow clap. "Wow," he said mockingly. "That was really well spoken. You're very articulate for someone from, well, you know." The room froze. "Thank you," Autumn replied evenly. "I appreciate you noticing my ability to communicate effectively." Chad pressed on, enjoying the discomfort he was stirring. "It's just refreshing. You know, sometimes folks from certain places struggle with big ideas." A hush fell over the class. "I think you'll find," Autumn said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk, "that people from all backgrounds are capable of surprising you." The bell rang, and Autumn gathered her books slowly, unfazed. But something inside her had changed. Chad had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. That evening back at home, Autumn drilled harder than usual in the basement. Her punches struck the heavy bag with deliberate force. She wasn't angry. She was focused. She wasn't planning revenge. She was preparing for survival. By Friday, the tension in school had thickened like fog. Autumn approached her locker to find more gifts. Students lingered nearby, watching, some ashamed, others entertained. She kept her cool, but the harassment escalated fast. In gym class, itching powder had been planted in her workout clothes. At lunch, Jake bumped into her again, sending her tray flying. Autumn knelt silently to clean it up as students stepped around her, some whispering, others smirking. A few offered help, but she waved them off. She didn't need pity. She needed resolve. Then came study hall. The monitor had stepped out. 30 students unsupervised with Chad and his goons at the center. "Hey everyone," Chad said, voice booming. "Got something special to share." He pulled out a Bluetooth speaker and played an audio clip. It was Autumn's voice, but twisted. Her thoughtful words about racial injustice from the day before had been spliced and manipulated. In this version, it sounded like she was insulting white students and declaring her hatred for the school. Gasps filled the room. "That's not what I said," Autumn said firmly. Chad stepped closer. "Are you calling me a liar?" "Everyone heard it." "No," she replied, standing slowly. "Everyone heard you manipulate it." The door swung open. Mrs. Chen returned, and Chad immediately toned it down. "Just a friendly discussion," he said, with a politician's smile. But Autumn saw what he was doing. He wasn't just trying to humiliate her, he was trying to push her over the edge, make her lash out. He wanted her to look like the problem. It nearly worked. At the end of the day, as she gathered her things, Miles Harper found her again. "That was fake. I was there. I know what you really said." "It doesn't matter," Autumn muttered. "The damage is done. You could fight it, prove it was edited." Or she said, slinging her backpack over her shoulder, "I could fight the source." Miles grabbed her arm. "Don't. That's what he wants. He's setting a trap." Autumn looked him in the eyes. "Some things are worth the risk." And with that, she walked toward the parking lot, toward Chad, Troy, and Zane, because she was done being quiet. It was time for a new kind of lesson. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Westlake High parking lot as Autumn Blake walked with purpose, her backpack dropped by the school entrance, her fists unclenched, but steady. She wasn't looking for attention, but students had already begun to gather, sensing something was about to happen. Chad Morrison stood near his car, with Troy and Zane still laughing about his manipulated audio stunt. The smirk fell from his face as he saw Autumn approach. "Well, well," Chad said, straightening his jacket. "Look who finally came to talk." Autumn stopped 10 feet away, her voice firm. "I'm done with your games, Chad. The fake recording, the harassment. It ends now." Chad's grin widened as his audience grew. "Oh, it ends when I say it ends," he replied loudly. "You think you can just walk into my school and disrespect me? Think again. Your school, Autumn, took a slow step forward. Last I checked, this was a public institution paid for by taxpayers, including my mother." His face twitched. The crowd was watching, and he was losing control of the moment. "You need to walk away while you still can," he warned. "I tried walking away," she said. "You followed. I tried ignoring you. You escalated. I tried being reasonable. Now we do it my way." Zane cracked his knuckles behind Chad. Troy took a wide stance. 3 against 1, Chad said smugly. "Not a good look for you. Neither is picking on someone you thought couldn't fight back." There was a beat of silence. And then Chad reached out to grab her arm. He never made it. Autumn pivoted fast. His wrist caught momentum used against him. Chad stumbled forward, gasping as her elbow met his solar plexus. He hit the pavement hard. Troy lunged next, swinging wildly. Autumn ducked, swept his legs, and sent him crashing down beside Chad. Zane hesitated, realizing the fight wasn't going to script. Autumn stood poised, weight-balanced, breath calm. He rushed anyway. Seconds later, he was doubled over, holding his ribs. The crowd gasped and parted as the scuffle moved across the parking lot. Chad kept charging, too furious to be smart. But Autumn, 8 years of disciplined training pulsing through her veins, dodged, countered, struck with precision. Finally, Chad lay face down on the asphalt, Autumn's knee between his shoulder blades. Are we done? She asked, voice low. Get off me, Chad growled. She leaned down just enough pressure to make her point. Are we done? Yeah, he gasped. We're done. You're going to leave me alone, all three of you. No more games, no more threats, no more fake recordings. Are we clear? Silence. Are we clear? Yes, Chad barked. We're clear. Autumn stood and backed away as he rolled over, blood trickling from his nose, his jacket rumpled, his pride broken. Phones were out. Students whispered stunned. She turned, walked calmly back toward the building, picked up her backpack, and disappeared inside just as Principal Ramirez emerged from her office, alerted by the crowd. There's been some kind of fight, a secretary reported. Ramirez rushed out just in time to see Chad being helped to his feet, Jake and Zane supporting him as he limped toward the exit. What happened here? She demanded. Nothing, Chad muttered, just fooling around. Fooling around, the principal raised an eyebrow. You're bleeding. I fell, Chad said quickly. Tripped over my own feet. The principal didn't believe a word, but with no formal complaint. And the boys, clearly not eager to explain, it ended there. For now. The next day, the story had already become legend. Some claimed Autumn used nunchucks. Others swore she flipped all three boys at once. But the truth circulating on social media was more powerful than rumor. A quiet, new girl standing up to bullies with grace, skill, and restraint. By second period, Autumn's inbox was full of messages from students she barely knew. One read, "You didn't just fight back. You gave the rest of us permission to stop being afraid." Then came the knock on her locker. Two girls, Jenna and Ashley sophomores, stood nervously. "Can we talk to you?" Jenna asked. Autumn turned cautious. "What's going on?" "There's a group of boys from Riverside High," Ashley said, voice barely a whisper. "They've been harassing us at the bus stop. Yesterday they grabbed my backpack and called us names. Said they'd be back today." Autumn nodded slowly. "What are you asking me?" "Would you come with us?" Jenna asked. "If they see you, maybe they'll back off." Autumn looked at their anxious faces, then thought of Chad. On the ground, the audio clip, the taped banana, all the whispers and laughter. She wasn't the only one being hunted. What time, she asked. 3:15. That afternoon, Autumn walked to the Maple Street bus stop with the girls. The sun was warm on her back. The air was quiet, too quiet. At 3:22, a beat-up Camaro pulled around the corner. Three boys stepped out, Brad, Connor, and Tyler, all swagger, all menace. Brad noticed Autumn instantly. "Who's the new girl?" "Nobody," Jenna said quickly, "just waiting for the bus." Connor grinned, flexing his tattooed arms. "Looks like somebody who doesn't belong." Tyler stepped toward Ashley. "You bring backup, sweetheart? That's not very friendly." Autumn's voice rang clear. "I'm here to talk. About how you're going to leave these girls alone." They laughed. "Or what?" Or she said calmly, "You'll find out what happens when you mistake silence for weakness." And just like that, the second battle began. But Autumn wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was standing for everyone who had been afraid to. The fight at the Maple Street bus stop didn't just end with three bullies groaning on the pavement. It sparked something larger, something, Autumn. Blake never intended, but something she couldn't stop. By the time the school bus wheezed to a halt and carried Autumn, Jenna, and Ashley away from the scene, Jessica Perez, a sophomore, who had been quietly filming from a nearby porch, had already uploaded the video. The title was bold, "One Girl Stops Three Bullies at Bus Stop. Finally, Someone Fights Back." By 7:00 p.m., the video had 300 shares. By 9:00 p.m., over 1,000. The comment sections lit up like wildfire. Students from 3 school districts shared stories of silent suffering, whispered fears, and long-ignored complaints. Autumn became more than just the new girl. She became a symbol. But not everyone was cheering. Across town, in the polished kitchen of the Morrison home, Chad sat with an ice pack pressed to his swollen nose. He stared in disbelief at his phone. The video looped on screen for the 5th time. Notifications wouldn't stop buzzing. "This can't be happening," he muttered. His phone rang. Jake. "You seeing this?" Jake's voice was tight with fury. "My dad's already asking questions about why I look like I got hit by a truck. She's making us look like fools," Chad snapped. First us, now the Riverside guys. People are calling her a superhero. At that very moment, Brad Matthews, the ringleader of the Riverside crew, was pacing his garage, face red with shame and rage. "We got taken down by one girl," Connor muttered, still nursing a sore wrist. "You get how bad that looks." "Worse than bad," Brad admitted. "She didn't just fight back. She humiliated us. And now every kid we ever scared is growing a spine." Meanwhile, back at Westlake High, the mood had shifted. The hallways no longer echoed with mockery. They buzzed with murmurs of admiration. Autumn wasn't just the girl who stood up to Chad. She was the girl who protected others when no one else would. Even Principal Ramirez, a woman not easily rattled, was forced to face the pressure. Monday morning, she arrived to a full voicemail inbox, parents divided. Some demanding Autumn be suspended for violence, others praising her for protecting their children. On her desk sat a stack of 12 harassment reports, all submitted over the weekend by students who, inspired by Autumn, had finally found their voice. During first period, as Autumn moved through the corridors, students greeted her with quiet nods of respect. Some asked shy questions. A few simply wanted to say thank you. "You're like a real-life action hero," said Danny, a sophomore who had endured bullying for years. "You made us believe we could push back." But with visibility came consequences. Outside the gym doors that afternoon, Chad and Jake watched Autumn through the glass panels as she led over 30 students in basic self-defense training. Coach Simmons, long supportive of student empowerment, stood quietly in the corner offering supervision, but not interference. "She's building an army," Jake said, his voice low. Chad's jaw clenched. "Then we remind her that actions have consequences." That night, in the back booth of a 24-hour diner, Chad met with Brad, Connor, Tyler, Jake, and Zane. The 6 boys, bruised in both pride and body, leaned in as Chad laid out his plan. "We can't touch her physically," he said. "Too many cameras. Too much attention. But we can destroy her legally." Brad hesitated. "You're talking about pressing charges." "I'm talking about filing official complaints," Chad replied coldly. "Assault, harassment, whatever it takes. My dad knows people. We say she attacked us unprovoked. We get her arrested, expelled, and her little fight club crumbles." "But there's video proof," Tyler objected. "Videos can be spun," Chad said smoothly. "Our families have influence. Hers doesn't." As the group quietly conspired miles away, Autumn finished up practice in the school gym. Students were buzzing, hopeful. They felt safe, maybe, for the first time. Ashley, one of the girls from the bus stop, now stood tall as she practiced wrist escapes with her partner. Coach Simmons approached Autumn as she packed up. "You've done something special here," he said. "They were always strong," Autumn replied. "They just needed permission to remember it." But deep down, she felt the tension shift. She noticed the glances that lasted too long, the whispers that paused when she passed. Something was brewing. Something calculated, and the storm hit just 2 days later. Autumn's mother, Dr. Pamela Blake, was reviewing patient files at the hospital when her phone rang. "This is Sergeant Hayes with the Westlake Police Department. We need you to come in with your daughter." "Is Autumn hurt?" "No, Mom, but we've had multiple assault complaints filed against her. We need to question her." The world seemed to freeze. Pamela rushed to the school only to find 2 officers already waiting in Principal Ramirez's office. The principal looked stricken. 6 boys, Chad Morrison, Jake, and others from Riverside have filed formal complaints. They say Autumn's been targeting and attacking them. "That's ridiculous," Pamela said firmly. "My daughter was defending herself and others." Autumn was called in. For the first time since arriving at Westlake, her calm exterior wavered. "Am I under arrest?" she asked. "Not yet," the officer replied. "But we need to take you in for questioning." As they left the building, the news spread like wildfire, and once again Autumn was at the center of it all. But this time she wasn't walking alone. As the police cruiser pulled away from Westlake High with Autumn Blake and her mother in the back seat, the campus exploded with confusion, disbelief, and anger. Students whispered in hallways, phones buzzed with speculation, and in the cafeteria, one name echoed through every conversation: Autumn. For many, she had become more than just a student. She was a symbol of courage. And now she was being taken away in handcuffs. Inside the principal's office, Principal Ramirez sat pale and stunned, her hands folded tightly on her desk. "I never imagined it would go this far," she murmured to herself. Across campus, Jessica Perez broke into tears when she heard the news. "It's my fault," she sobbed to Ashley, clutching her phone. "If I hadn't posted that video, if I hadn't made her a target." "No," Ashley said firmly, wiping away her own tears. "This is Chad's fault. And Jake's. And every last one of them who can't stand that someone finally stood up to them." Within an hour, a student movement had begun. Marcus Harper, the quiet junior, who had once warned Autumn about Chad's influence, now stood on a table in the cafeteria and called out, "They're trying to destroy her for protecting us, for teaching us how to stand up. Are we going to let that happen?" The answer was a resounding no. By the end of the lunch period, a group chat called Justice for Autumn had over 200 members. Videos from the Maple Street bus stop reappeared online with clear commentary exposing the truth: 3 older boys harassing 2 younger girls, and 1 person brave enough to stop it. Meanwhile, at the police station, Autumn sat in a cold gray interview room. Her court-appointed attorney, Ms. Rodriguez, reviewed the complaints filed against her 6 in total. Each one accused Autumn of unprovoked physical violence, bullying, and even intimidation. "This is absurd," Dr. Pamela Blake snapped, seated beside her daughter. "My daughter was protecting others. She has evidence. She has witnesses." Ms. Rodriguez tapped her pen against her notepad. "They're not trying to prove she's dangerous. They're trying to drown her in paperwork. They want to break her spirit before this ever reaches a courtroom." Autumn recounted every detail: the welcome fee Chad tried to demand, the gum in her locker, the missing notebook, the doctored recording, the bus stop incident, everything. Ms. Rodriguez scribbled notes furiously. "Do you have any documentation?" she asked. "I took pictures of some of the damage," Autumn said. "Coach Simmons might have security footage from the gym. Jessica filmed the bus stop incident. And there are messages from students who thanked me after." Ms. Rodriguez nodded. "We'll need every one of those." Back at school, Coach Simmons had his own confrontation with Principal Ramirez. "You know this is wrong," he said through clenched teeth. "That girl changed this school. These kids trust her." Principal Ramirez looked exhausted. 6 families have filed official complaints. The school board is panicking. Their lawyers are already drafting statements. She's the only reason half the students here aren't still terrified to walk the halls. "I know," Ramirez said, rubbing her temples, "but this is bigger than the school now. It's legal. It's political." Just then, Mrs. Chen, the school secretary, knocked and peeked in. Her face flushed. "There's a situation in the hallway," she said cautiously. "You should come see this." Principal Ramirez followed her out and froze. Over 50 students stood in the main corridor holding handmade signs that read, "Protect Autumn. Stop shielding bullies. She defended us." Several parents had joined them. The crowd wasn't shouting, just standing, unmoving, unshaken, determined. "Call the school board, President," Ramirez said softly. "We have a situation." That night, Ms. Rodriguez worked late, compiling video evidence, drafting witness lists, and coordinating with families willing to testify. The more she saw, the angrier she became. "This case," she muttered, "isn't about justice. It's about power. But they picked the wrong girl to intimidate." Meanwhile, at a diner on the edge of town, Chad and his allies gathered again: Brad, Jake, Connor, Tyler, and Zane. "This is spiraling," Jake said, panicked. "There are videos everywhere, protesters at school, parents posting on Facebook. What if this backfires?" "It won't," Chad snapped. "My dad already talked to our attorney. He's going to spin this. We're the victims, not her." "We better hope that works," Connor muttered. "Because I heard Autumn's lawyer has a growing list of students ready to testify." Back at Autumn's house, Dr. Blake wrapped a blanket around her daughter's shoulders as they sat together in silence. "Whatever happens next," Pamela said, her voice low and steady, "I am proud of you." Autumn nodded. "I didn't ask for any of this, Mom. I know," her mother said. "But sometimes the fight finds you. And when it does, you don't get to walk away, you get to decide how you show up." Autumn leaned against her mother, tears quietly falling. Not from fear, not from regret. from the weight of standing for herself and now for so many others. And she would not bend. The following Monday, the sun hadn't yet cleared the tree line when Autumn Blake and her mother walked through the glass doors of the Westlake County Courthouse. The early morning air was cool, but the tension inside was stifling. Reporters were already gathered outside their microphones ready. Camera crews had staked out their angles, and inside the gallery was full. Students, parents, teachers, even former skeptics now silently offering support. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Judge Helen Thompson, a composed woman in her early 50s with steely eyes and a reputation for fairness, called the courtroom to order. Wow. This is the case of State versus Autumn. Blake charges include assault and battery brought forward by 6 complainants. Autumn sat between her attorney, Ms. Rodriguez, and her mother. Her hands were folded, her back straight, her face calm, but inside her heart beat a rhythm of uncertainty. She had spent every night for the past 2 weeks preparing for this moment, reliving every step, every word, every punch thrown, not in anger, but in defense. She was ready. The prosecution opened first. Mr. Blackwood, Chad's father's high-priced attorney, stood tall and commanding in his designer suit. His voice rang through the courtroom with practiced ease. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, turning to the judge, "this case is about a paterna, disturbing pattern of unprovoked violence. We will show that this student, Ms. Blake, used her martial arts training not to protect, but to intimidate, to control, and to harm." He gestured toward Chad Morrison, sitting at the plaintiff's table, with a bandage still visible on the bridge of his nose. Head bowed in calculated humility. These 6 boys were victims of a campaign of fear initiated by someone who believed her fists were the law. Whispers stirred behind them in the gallery. Then it was Ms. Rodriguez's turn. Calmly she rose, walking slowly to the center of the courtroom. "Your Honor," she began, "this case is not about aggression. It's about resistance, about one student who refused to be silenced in the face of repeated threats and violence, and about an entire school system that until now looked the other way." She turned toward Chad and his friends. They didn't expect her to stand up. They certainly didn't expect her to win. And now they're trying to punish her, not because she broke the rules, but because she broke their control. The first witness to testify was Chad. He took the stand with a carefully rehearsed air of fragility. "I just wanted to welcome her," he said. "Help her adjust." She turned everything into a fight. "And the incident in the parking lot?" Blackwood asked. "She confronted us. We tried to walk away. She attacked us without warning." Ms. Rodriguez rose for cross-examination. "Mr. Morrison," she said evenly, "isn't it true you demanded Autumn pay a welcome fee on her first day?" "I don't recall that." "You don't recall being recorded in the cafeteria telling her to pay easy or pay hard. That was taken out of context." She clicked her laptop. A screen lit up in the courtroom. The uncut footage played. Chad's own voice filled the room. Judge Thompson leaned forward. "Is this your voice, Mr. Morrison?" Chad's throat bobbed. "Yes, but I was joking." More videos followed. The altered English class recording. The banana taped to her locker. The confrontation at the bus stop. By the 3rd clip, murmurs were rising in the gallery. Then came Jessica Perez, her hands trembling slightly as she was sworn in. "I filmed the bus stop video," she said, "because I was scared. But I knew it wasn't right to let them lie. Autumn didn't attack anyone. She stepped in to protect us." Next came Marcus Harper, Ashley, Jenna, even Coach Simmons' testimony painting a clear, undeniable portrait of a coordinated campaign of harassment and a young woman who refused to be its next silent victim. Then finally Autumn was called to the stand. She walked slowly to the witness box, sat, and looked Judge Thompson straight in the eye. "I never wanted to fight anyone," she began, her voice steady. "I came to Westlake to finish school and stay out of trouble. But trouble came looking for me and for kids smaller than me." She spoke of the threats, the traps, the way every polite refusal only escalated things, of how she tried to ignore them, and when that failed, how she defended herself. When asked if she regretted anything, Autumn paused. "I regret that it had to get that far," she said. "But I don't regret standing up. Because once you let fear decide your silence, you lose everything." There wasn't a sound in the room. Judge Thompson recessed court for an hour. When she returned, the courtroom was packed tighter than ever. "I have reviewed all the testimony, the video evidence, and the background on all complainants," she said. "And it is the opinion of this court that the defendant acted in clear and repeated self-defense. All charges against Ms. Blake are hereby dismissed." The gallery exploded in applause. Jessica cried. Marcus hugged his friend. Ashley and Jenna clutched each other, smiling through tears. Autumn sat motionless for a moment, then turned and collapsed into her mother's arms. "It's over," she whispered. "We did it." Pamela held her close. "No, baby, it's just beginning. Now they know your name and what it stands for." As reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, Autumn walked out slowly, surrounded not by guards, but by her classmates. No longer alone, and never again afraid. The verdict rippled through Westlake like an earthquake, shaking not just the walls of the courthouse, but the very foundation of the school's culture. As Autumn Blake stepped back onto campus the next morning, flanked by students who had once whispered from the sidelines, everything felt different. There were no more sidelong glances, no more smirks. Students who had once turned their backs now made way for her with quiet respect. She had walked into that courtroom alone, but she returned as a symbol of what standing up could truly look like. And yet Autumn knew that victory in court wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Principal Ramirez, after her own emotional testimony on the stand, where she admitted that harassment reports had been ignored, moved swiftly. New zero-tolerance bullying policies were implemented. Anonymous reporting hotlines were added. Teachers underwent training on how to identify subtle bullying and microaggressions. What had once been a place where cruelty hid in the shadows now had nowhere left to run. But the biggest change happened in the gymnasium. Coach Simmons' after-school program, once a quiet gathering of 30 students, now saw more than 100 kids lined up at the door hoping to learn not just how to throw a punch, but how to stand tall. It was renamed the Student Empowerment and Safety Program. Autumn was asked to lead the sessions, and though she hesitated at first, still adjusting to the attention, she accepted. Not for herself, but for the 7th graders who walked the halls clutching their books like armor, for the girls like Jenna and Ashley, who once feared the bus stop, for the classmates who now finally had the courage to say, "That happened to me too." The training expanded beyond martial arts. They added peer mediation workshops, sessions on setting boundaries, role-playing exercises to practice verbal de-escalation. Students once divided by cliques or social circles now partnered up to coach each other through drills and trust exercises. Even teachers and staff began attending quietly, watching from the bleachers or offering to help. One of Autumn's first students, Sarah Lynn, who had barely spoken above a whisper when she joined, now stood proudly teaching younger students how to break free from wrist holds. "I used to walk with my head down," Sarah said during a group water break. "Now I walk like someone who knows I have a right to be here." Her voice was stronger now. So were her eyes. And she wasn't alone. Danny, who had been bullied for years by upperclassmen, now led a peer support group for students dealing with anxiety and trauma. He worked with the school counselor to provide a safe space where students could share process and rebuild. "Autumn didn't just teach us to fight," Danny told a local reporter. "She taught us that we deserve to feel safe and that we have the right to demand it." Even outside Westlake, the ripple effects were being felt. Neighboring schools requested consultations. Parents and administrators reached out to Coach Simmons and Principal Ramirez, asking how they could replicate the program. Autumn received letters from students across the state, some handwritten, others typed in trembling fonts, thanking her for showing them that strength didn't have to be loud, that courage didn't require popularity, That one person standing tall could shift the balance of an entire system. One Friday afternoon, 6 months after the trial, Autumn stood once again in the very cafeteria where Chad Morrison had once tried to humiliate her. But this time, everything was different. The cliques had softened. Students shared tables they never would have weeks before. There was laughter, confidence, safety. Jessica approached her with a wide grin, waving a yellow envelope. "This came for you," she said, "from California." Autumn opened it cautiously and unfolded a handwritten letter. "Dear Autumn, I saw your story on the news, and I wanted you to know because of you, I started a self-defense group at my school. We have 30 members now, and this semester for the first time we've had 0 bullying incidents. Thank you for showing us we don't have to be scared anymore. Lena, 10th grade, Fresno." CA. Autumn swallowed hard as she read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into her backpack alongside the growing stack of similar letters she kept tucked in a notebook labeled "Reasons to Keep Going." Across the table, Marcus Harper raised his eyebrows. "Another one?" "Another one," Autumn confirmed with a small smile. As the bell rang and students began gathering their things, Autumn remained seated for a moment, watching the crowd move with ease and freedom that would have been unimaginable just a semester earlier. A boy helped a younger student with his lunch tray. A group of theater kids laughed with 2 basketball players. The cafeteria, once tense with invisible borders, felt like a place where people belonged. Autumn knew things weren't perfect. Chad and his friends were gone, facing civil lawsuits and disciplinary transfers, but new problems would always surface. Still, what had begun as a lone act of defiance had become a living, breathing movement, a culture shift, a declaration. She stood slinging her backpack over one shoulder. Her mother had once told her that some fights you don't choose, they choose you. Now she knew another truth. When you choose to stand, you give others permission to rise. And once people really rise, there's no going back. The weeks that followed were quieter, but not in a forgettable way. Autumn Blake no longer had to fight with her fists. Her presence alone changed the way students behaved. Her voice, once only heard in defense, now guided discussions in classrooms, planning meetings, and student leadership forums. One afternoon, as she walked through the courtyard, she paused near the flagpole where a group of younger students were practicing self-defense moves under Sarah Lynn's supervision. It filled her with something she hadn't felt in a long timepiece. She glanced up at the windows of the school, reflecting sunlight and the new spirit of her community. Not fear, not silence, but resilience. As Autumn continued toward the gym for the afternoon training session, Principal Ramirez met her at the door. "You've changed this place, Autumn," she said softly. "And not just with strength, but with grace." Autumn smiled. "I didn't do it alone." "No," the principal agreed. "But you were the spark, and sometimes that's all it takes. In life, you don't always get to choose the battles that find you, but you do get to choose how you respond. Courage isn't always loud, it's often quiet, steady, and persistent." Autumn's story reminds us that one act of bravery can ripple out and empower an entire community. Never underestimate the power of standing your ground, not just for yourself, but for those who haven't found their voice yet. If this story inspired you, let us know in the comments below. Share your thoughts or your own experiences. Someone out there might need to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one, and hit the like button to support the message of courage and justice. Let's build a community where no one stands alone.